And we are live on the internet. You're ready to start whenever you want.
Looks like there's still a few people in the waiting room. Good evening, everybody. My name is Louise Adler. I'm chair of Canyon Dems. And you can see the areas in Southern Orange County that we cover on the screen. We are doing this using Zoom, and we are also recording it, and it will, we hopeful it will be up on YouTube. So I have a few comments about what's been going on, and then we'll start, hold an election, and then we'll have our speaker. So the first thing we always do is the Pledge of Allegiance. And so I will say it for all of us, because if we let everybody speak it, it comes out a complete garble. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I just think we have to acknowledge what's been happening, that we have all been watching it. I feel like I have whiplash with all the things that have happened between the election on November 3rd and tomorrow when we get to swear in our new president. So I just thought before we kick off our business that we should think a little bit about this. Of course, the Georgia election was wonderful, and it happened on January 5th, and we thought we were kicking off the year with a bang and that all things would go well after that, but things didn't all go well. The next day we had an insurrection and an invasion of the capital of the United States, which hasn't happened since the War of 1812 with England. And that was beyond shocking, of course. And then as a result of that, we had Speaker Pelosi sign articles of impeachment on January the 15th, but she still has them and she hasn't sent them on to the Senate yet as of tonight. And then of course we have the COVID crisis that's happening. And it's hard to conceptualize how bad it has been. I heard on the news tonight that 1/4 of all the people who've died have died in the last month. And that seems totally shocking, but we are now up to 400,000 deaths. So I know this is a little morbid, but it's a way to think about the size of what's been happening. If you took all the people that have died and lined their coffins up end to end along the highway heading east, you would have to drive from Lake Forest to St. Joseph, Arizona before you would pass the last coffin, or you would have to drive over 500 miles and it would take over 8 hours. And that sort of is like, wow, that is a lot. And of course, I'm so proud of our new president to be tomorrow for finally somebody acknowledging these deaths that have been happening at an alarming rate, but yet we've had no public grieving. And I thought that the lighting of the reflecting pool in front of the Lincoln Memorial was absolutely spot on. And I'm so proud of the Biden campaign for doing it. Okay, so we're going to use a Zoom format tonight. And the important thing about Zoom is it can be interactive. So at a couple points tonight, you're going to be asked to vote. We're going to, you will be able to nominate people from the floor for officers, but the way that you will have to do it is by clicking on the chat function, which I've highlighted here with the white arrow. So if you would like to make a nominations from the floor, you would click on that and type in your nomination. Or if you want to ask questions of our speaker, you would go there. And we will keep almost everybody muted, because otherwise we hear strange things like the dog barking or the telephone ringing in all of the households of all the people who are on the Zoom, and that obviously doesn't work. So be sure to use that chat function. You can chat with other people in the function as well, but we urge you not to get too lengthy in there, because otherwise we won't be able to see nominations and other things. So now I'm going to turn the floor over to Walt Lawson, who is the chair of our nominating committee. And every 2 years, Walt takes on this job and does an outstanding work with his committee. And I'll let him tell you about it. Walt, are you there? I know I heard Walt come in. Is he unmuted? Can we unmute Walt?
How about now?
Oh, wonderful, Walt. Thank you.
Louise, thank you. Again, my name is Walt Lawson, and I'm the chair of the nominating committee. Our charge was to nominate a slate of officers for the next 2 years. The slate we have selected is as follows. You can see on the board. I didn't realize there would be a picture, so I'm not going to read. You can clearly see the nominees. Our club guidelines indicate that the election will be held at the January meeting. This is the January meeting, and we will open the floor for nominations by members. In this case, obviously, we'll do it online. In the past, we have done each office separately, but since we are on Zoom, we will proceed as follows. We will open the floor for any member who would like to make a nomination for any of the 4 offices. And as Louise just indicated, you're going to place your nomination in the chat by hitting that button, and you're going to provide the name of the person you are nominating, the office you're nominating them for, and your name. If there are nominations from members, then we will do the elections office by office. If there are no nominations from the floor for any of the offices, I will ask for a motion to elect the nominated slate. With a motion, a second, and a positive vote on the motion, all the nominees will stand as elected. So please, if you have a nomination, make it now. Go to the chat button and make it now. Thank you.
And Rachel, will you look at the chat and report to Walt and I if there are any nominations? Please.
Yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on it for about the next 30 to 40 seconds.
Or a minute and a half. I should have had some music to play. Da, 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 you know.
Heather has requested to make a motion from the floor. I've gone ahead and unmuted her. Heather, do you want to make your motion?
No,
you have no nominations then?
I see no nominations thus far.
Okay, if that's the case, then I'm going to ask for a motion to elect the nominated slate as you see before you on the screen. Is
So
there a
moved,
motion?
Walt. I make that motion.
Motion has been made by Heather Gilbert. Is there a second for that motion?
There's a second on the floor from Melora Kluckner.
From who?
Melora.
Melora, thanks so much for the second. Now we have a motion and a second, so the motion is now on the floor. Louise, I think as the chair, you ought to call the motion for a vote.
Right. Rachel, will you please put up the poll and everybody can vote in the poll? Yes would mean you're voting for this slate of officers, and a no would mean you're not.
And we do ask that only active members vote in this poll.
I should have
If
said
you're
that.
not a current member of the club, please refrain. We can't exclude you from seeing the poll, but we do ask that you not vote in it.
And I can't see the poll, so
That's fine. We're about 75% voted so far. It is 100% yes and 0% no. So 59 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay. That means there's 59 people who don't want to do the work that the people on the board are doing.
Okay, so
Make
Louise,
that make that 60 for the secretary. 60
Right.
60 in favor, 0 opposed. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Walt, for all your hard work and the other members of the committee. And I'm honored to serve again. Thank you.
and as a member of the nominating committee, we wish our new board of officers great success over these next 2 years. I think we're going to be off to a flying start and do lots more things than we've even done in the past. Thanks again, Louise, for letting me serve.
Thank you, Walt. Okay, so the way we expedite things in our club is by using a system of having items on a consent list. So here on the left side of your screen, you see the agenda, and the boxes with check marks are all on the consent list. So we can vote all of them at one time, okay? There's only one piece of new business here. The rest of it is just the normal declaring a quorum and so on. And the only new item here is a motion from the executive board to send $2,500 to the Foley for Supervisor campaign. And if you give me just a minute, I won't spend too much time on this. But to give you some background, the district that Katrina is running in is along the coast. She is right now the mayor of Costa Mesa, and she has run in some of these cities like Newport Beach before for other offices, so she's well known. And you can see a wonderful quote from the Voice of OC about her race. If we are able to elect her, she would be the second Democrat on the Board of Supervisors, which would then open up at the next regular election the potential that we might get the majority of the Board of Supervisors. So it's kind of all hands on deck to support this. So I hope you will agree with the board that we can spend this money, and we will go to the business that we have to do. So based on the vote, I know we have a quorum. We're going to adopt the agenda. We're going to adopt the general meeting minutes of, oh, it shouldn't say August. I'm sorry. It should say November. We are going to vote on the 2,500 for Foley, and we're going to vote on the motion to adjourn at the end of the meeting, so we don't have to have another vote. And as you know, we're going to use the poll again. So first of all, if there's somebody who would like to remove one of these items from the consent list, would you please put that in the chat now? Otherwise,
we had one mention that maybe Katrina Foley's race is maxed at $2,100, not $2,500.
and you know, I think that's absolutely correct. And that was my mistake. So we will change that to $2,100 when we record the information. Kathy Palmer, will you fix that when you do the minutes? And I'm sorry for that blooper, and good for the person who caught it. Are there any other issues to be removed from the consent list? Anything, Rachel, in the chat?
Nothing.
Nope. Okay, let's put the poll up and vote on this.
And please, all the teachers, forgive my spelling.
How are we doing?
So by a vote of 57 for and 1 against, 58 for and 1 against.
Okay,
It passes.
all right. Thank you very much. Just quickly to announce the additional members of the board of directors. The 4 officers that you voted on before are at the top. We also have 9 committee chairs, and there are several new committee chairs. Allison Uke in communications and Judy Fike in field are new. The rest are returning. And also our past president, Gary Gephardt, serves on the board. And this year, for the first time, we've done it informally, but we're making it more formal. We have 4 at-large members, so we have a bigger board. And also Heather Gilbert is new to this group and has not been on the board before. So just that's by information about what's going on. And you'll hear more from those committee chairs after our speaker. So now I'm going to introduce Annie Krinsky, who is our program chair par excellence. And she's going to introduce our speaker. So I get to take a break and relax and enjoy. Annie?
Okay, before I tell you about tonight's speaker, in our February program, we're going to hear from Susan Parks. She's the president and CEO of Orange County United Way. She'll talk about some of their excellent assistance programs and their efforts on pandemic relief. But tonight, I'm so happy and so pleased to introduce Norberto Santana Jr. He's the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Voice of Orange County. This is a nonprofit newsletter that focuses on Orange County civics and the arts. And we're just very happy. So please post your questions in the chat, and the screen is yours, Norberto.
Can everybody hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for having me here again. Groups like yours are really the sort of lifeblood of American democracy. You're the people that really make it happen on a daily basis on a host of different issues. This year on coronavirus, we saw again when it came time for the county government to try to get a handle on what was happening in these threatened neighborhoods. It came to them tapping into groups like Latino Health Access and other nonprofits in the Asian American community to be able to go and get people, figure out why the positivity rates in these neighborhoods were so difficult. It was those sort of civil associations, those small nonprofit groups that made a huge difference in getting people, frankly, keeping people alive, because in those inner city neighborhoods in Santa Ana, in Anaheim, throughout this, it's one thing that the coronavirus has really sort of like underscored, are these sort of like inequities in our society, the way that we do development, the way that we deal with homelessness, and the impacts on surrounding communities, who our essential workers are, what's deemed an essential worker and what's not deemed an essential worker. So we saw right away that while the Board of Supervisors really wasn't talking much about the on-the-ground impacts of coronavirus, we could see it in the neighborhoods being impacted, where the positivity rates were going up into the 20%. It was only after they contracted these small nonprofits that we started to see that sort of like turning around. Obviously, that's the big issue now, is in terms of getting what is it? We have, 2,500, nearly 2,500 people dead in Orange County. I mean, Louise, you mentioned that at the beginning of the broadcast. That's the big challenge in Orange County. There hasn't been a lot of debate about those 2,500 people, what's been happening, how fast it's been happening. In fact, the last year, we probably saw the Board of Supervisors really politicize the pandemic response. And that's something that I think that we've seen over the last decade at least at Voice of Publishing, we've seen, the Board of Supervisors more and more politicize what's going on with healthcare response, with law enforcement. You see the shift in law enforcement spending is precipitous over the last decade. And one thing I would say to you is this: it's probably not that different in LA County, Riverside County, San Diego County. You know, unfortunately, we pay a lot of attention to the national political scene, but we don't pay much attention to what's happening locally around homelessness, housing, transportation, parking, the variety of issues that really, when you think about it, make a huge difference in people's lives. So that's really what Voice of OC was founded on, you know, 10 years ago, which is this idea that when it comes to government, details matter. I mean, right now, too, I mean, you've got a Democrat on the Board of Supervisors. As you mentioned, with this incoming election, there's going to be a big question there. Does it stay as a 4-1 majority, tilting Republican? Does it turn into a more competitive environment at 3-2, 3 Republicans versus 2 Democrats? And even with Democrats on there, you still see that in your government, there's that old saying of expect what you inspect. It really comes down to the details. Because as you see, even in the Democratic Party, you have very big differences between moderate Democrats, what they call progressive Democrats. And the devils are in the details. Every single decision that is made either moves you towards a better quality of life or away from it. Our reporting, the Voice of OC model is really based around engagement. Everyone has a voice. Everyone can express themselves. And the issues that are most important are on the ground, impacting your local communities. In that sense, we're not there to entertain you as a media model. We're there to help engage people. We're there to help people connect with each other. And in some cases, we have very hard debates that are not easy to have. And that if anything, you need some sort of semblance of media that can provide you a good primary source of documents, that from there, the reader can make their own decisions. And that's what we've really tried to concentrate on, is engaging communities as opposed to just entertaining them. In the last year, we've added on arts and culture as well, because many people in that, many writers in that community saw that the same trend that's happening at your local city halls is also happening at your local cultural institutions, which are not getting covered. And they're not getting a strong coverage in the newspaper, because frankly, that kind of news doesn't really monetize that well with advertising. You know, we saw a shift in commercial newspapers away from, say, fine arts coverage, more towards Desperate Housewives, coverage of TV, coverage of popular events. That really is the conundrum that faces modern day media, is how does it fund itself? At Voice, we've gone with this nonprofit model. The idea being is that the readers are our best funders. You make the decision. You read the pages, read the news, and make your decision on whether you want to fund that operation or not, whether you see your local neighborhood there or not. And again, we've probably, this year with COVID, we probably saw the importance of that kind of reporting more than ever, because the idea being is that we're umpires, and we go in there and try to give you the information so that you can make these calls as best as you can. And granted, a lot of these, when you get to the local issues, that's where it's, I think, toughest, because a lot of times in politics, we sort of can pick and choose our issues. At the local level, the issues are much more mixed. You know, there's a little bit of everything on all sides, really, when it comes to housing, open space, law enforcement. You really see this, the debate that needs to happen. The problem, the challenge here in Orange County is that it's a one-sided debate oftentimes. And even again, you see where you have a Democrat on the Board of Supervisors yet, it's still kind of, it's still a kind of like a one-sided affair. You still have boards of supervisors that are doing procurement in 2-man subcommittees or 2-person subcommittees, meaning that they're spending your money on the pandemic in a way that's not transparent. You're only hearing about it when it's all spent. So for example, the Board of Supervisors spent $540 million of federal CARES Act dollars in Orange County over the last 9 months. And I would ask any of you if you know what they spent it on, or what agency they spent it on, what type of response. When they're rolling out things like testing contracts and contact tracing, we don't see any of those RFPs. Right in the beginning of the disaster, they gave all of that contracting authority to the CEO. And there's never been another public discussion about it again. If anything, this is what's been really frightening about the pandemic, is to see this like non-transparent government really take off. This idea that, you don't want to know everything that's going on, and you don't want to hear every voice out there, where they pick and choose what they want to tell you about what things are going on. When the vaccine rolls out and you've got questions about, why is the app so bad? Why is everybody having such a hard time logging onto it? They tell you, well, what's important to note is that 20,000 people have been serviced. And you're like, well, yeah, I get that. But again, why is it having glitches? By the way, who's the company that did that? What's the contract? How much does it cost? You don't have a lot of ability to be able to sort of gauge, any of those sort of like arguments in terms of like what testing company did they use, one over the other. This is the real challenge of modern day government. It's in the details. It's figuring out, what's been going on with the COVID response. I think it really, again, pointed it out as the deaths have been rising. You're right. I haven't seen the Board of Supervisors stop and reflect the massive wave of death that has, especially in the last few months, taken over. There's been no public acknowledgement of that whatsoever, or even updates as to what are we finding out with contract tracing. I mean, a perfect example, a few months ago, Cal OSHA, after a bill in the legislature, updated their regulations that in a workplace, you have to start reporting out outbreaks. Well, what happens right away in the county of Orange, we wrote a column about it where we were able to look and see, well, this department has a lot of outbreaks. This one doesn't. Why is that? Is one manager doing something differently than another person is? What can we learn from that? But that's something where, frankly, government has challenges in wanting to learn out in front of everybody, even though in a democratic form of government, that's exactly what should be happening. An official should be able to go in front of you and say, I made a mistake here. We thought it was going to be this much, but it didn't work out that way. And here's what we're doing. What you find these days is a real sort of tendency to not want to have that kind of discussion or debate, or even an admission of a mistake, or much less just something that really went off the rails. I think, again, that's our biggest problem in government. Now, we set up Voice to try to tackle that in a sense of putting reporters at the basic diocese, and you see the difference in the coverage. I mean, all of you know a lot more about the pandemic because there's a daily reporter there just covering it. I mean, it's that basic, The reporter's not trying to entertain you. The reporter's not trying to freak you out either. The reporter is just trying to basically give you the information so that you can make the decisions about what you want to do about your quality of life, who you should hold accountable for what decision. And in that case, again, we're nonpartisan. We don't go Republican or don't go Democrat. We try to get the basic information out there so that, again, the regular processes that are already working in government, can work better. Again, with the COVID response here, the problem is, again, as we've talked about most recently, they haven't had a press conference, I think, in about a month. Ever since Michelle Steele won her election, we have no longer seen a weekly press conference. And that is during the deadliest part of the pandemic. So, I mean, you just see this sort of connection here in Orange County. I can't speak to LA or Riverside because we don't cover it every day. My sense is if we covered it every day, we probably wouldn't like what we'd see, either. The key is here, though, you have to be able to see what's in front of you to get involved and to be able to hold everybody accountable for what they've said or what they haven't said. That's really the key of the Voice model. We have, we've been at it now for about 10 years. Our readership is going anywhere from about 600,000 to about 1 million, depending upon the month, especially grew over the last year. It's largely reader funded. I mean, there's a lot of donations coming in from a lot of your members here. Some are donors. That's been the main point here. Again, thanks, Louise. I saw Gloria Septon out there as well. Gloria's been a long time subscriber and also op-ed writer. Here's one of the keys too, that a lot of what you'll see in the Voice comes from your own community. It's through the postings on the community op-ed pages. Gloria herself has written about tree ordinances and a host of different issues affecting the canyons over the years. Voices that we would not hear if we didn't have a nonprofit newsroom, because that's the key there, is that a lot of these voices should be heard. Their ideas, their contentions should be able to be placed out on the racetrack of policy and let them figure it out. I can tell you that a lot of the op-ed writers have made great changes. You have a $35 million animal care building and facility and new infrastructure, thanks to Rose Tingle, who wrote op-ed after op-ed for probably about 3 years, while the Board of Supervisors sat on $5 million that they had from the Navy to put an animal care center over, and I think it was Tustin. Rose kept writing about the situation of that, calling it out as the oldest animal shelter in Southern California, which it was, and pointing out all of the different problems. She triggered something like 5 different grand jury investigations just off of her op-eds, because again, the officials read it and they see it, and you could see that what she was reporting was heartfelt. The Board of Supervisors finally, after, again, it was like about 3 years of her writing. I never thought they would change it. And finally, one day with Sean Nelson, former supervisor now at the DA's office, who finally said to the CEO, can we just take that $5 million and move it to a different property and essentially do a property swap? And the CEO said, yes, sir, we can do that. And so sure enough, the voice of the public was heard on that issue. And all it took was the consistency of Rose continuing to engage and continuing to engage. You know, I think that's the key for us is just keep going with an engagement model as opposed to entertaining people. I think that's where potentially in media, some of what is going on in DC, I fear, you know, also media has to also sort of, I don't know, take some responsibility for that, that we've had this kind of coverage for so long that just pits people against each other, as opposed to really ferreting out sort of deeper issues and going after the issues, as opposed to trying to find the extremes on each issue. That worries me long term for our country, that our modern media continues to fall apart. And the question is, what will replace it? Unfortunately, what seems to be replacing it is a lot of Facebook and a lot of these sort of like paid ads and all kinds of questionable sort of like media that puts out one-sided arguments. And as you can see, I mean, it really is impacting a lot of our fellow citizens that are in a lot of ways confused. Now, sometimes when modern media also covers politics or policy from an entertaining perspective, it also, I fear, tends to destroy credibility around hearing news that you might not want to hear. You know, and that's, I think, the toughest thing is news. There used to be an old saying that said, news is what they don't want you to know. Everything else is PR. So again, that's the other part about reading something that you don't like is, you know, sometimes part of life as well. Now, again, in Orange County, what we've tried to do with our model is concentrate on county coverage, you know, not DC, not even Sacramento. So I'd like to include more of that as we move on, but we've really concentrated on what's happening in our local communities. You know, at the Board of Supervisors, we've concentrated on Santa Ana, Anaheim. Most recently, we've also, you know, as we've been able to add on reporters over the years, we've been able to start covering more of South County, more of Costa Mesa, some of Newport Beach and the coast. The canyons, we had some great, you know, one of our interns this year did a great job on launching our disaster page, which looked at a lot of the fire response issues, which are frankly considerable. I mean, during the last big wildfire we had, officials here, this has become a sport where they all get together around a fire truck and they all congratulate each other for a half an hour on the great job they did. It's like watching C students give each other A's. And, you know, they'll talk about the evacuation, even though there were a lot of issues with the evacuation. I mean, we've got interns that are tackling this stuff and putting out extremely high level journalism, looking at the disaster response agencies here in Orange County, getting better at tracking their Twitter feeds. That, frankly, is part of our future, is continue to work with young students. We've had Chapman University has partnered with us to, frankly, almost turn it into a teaching hospital where we have a lot of young interns coming to work with us and doing a lot of the coverage on the smaller cities, which, you know, under any media environment, those smaller cities are not going to get covered. And that's, again, as a nonprofit where we have to figure out as a community, how do we ensure that we get at minimum good coverage, right? People can have different opinions from there, and that process will take care of itself in the political process. I think the big fear, and again, what we're seeing in DC underscores that, is that can you really have a functioning democracy without an educated citizenry that has the tools to get equipped and to call out BS when it sees it, and in an effective way where not just everything is BS. And so that's where I think it's a real challenge. And I think that it's important at the local level. And that's why I think all of us that are involved with the Voice Project have put our life and soul into it, is this idea that it's like we have to get our own hands around our local communities. You know, at the end of the day, for you all holding your supervisors, your politicians accountable, it's only as good as you can check on them. You know, and these days you're getting in an environment where a politician can go and say whatever they want to say, and it's very hard in some ways to hold them accountable in real time. Other than like say maybe during elections when a lot of stuff fleshes out and it's kind of questionable. You ever notice that? It's like all of a sudden there's tons of news about everybody for 2 months, and then it just kind of all goes away and it gets all very calm. So that's one thing I think that we work on at Voice, is to try to keep a consistent level of engagement, as opposed to seeing spikes during election where people, Democrats or Republicans, elect who they want to elect and they think everything got taken care of. And it's kind of like, you know, that's where the hard work begins, is electing your elected body, but then holding them accountable, going to public comment, you know, seeing what's up there. And again, the challenge, I hope that we can do more of it over time, is publicizing things like audits that come in, claims against the government, doing city pages so that each one of you could see your your city's budget, right? And crunched in a way that was useful. A lot of times we spend so much money as taxpayers generating reports that meet the minimum level of transparency, but are ultimately useless for anybody because they're really not accessible. If you go try to read the county budget or even one of your city budgets, it's really challenging. You can tell it's written by bureaucrats. So if anything, that's something where we want to see the interns and fellows really work hard to create these city pages where you could have the campaign finance of your elected officials, the real functioning of your budget, what's happening with the 4 parks in my city and how well funded are they, or what are the improvements that are scheduled, and when are we going to have that meeting? A lot of government these days is like watching speed chess, right? You have a hearing, it happens, boom, 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 and it's done. And before you even know it, you've been encumbered with a massive amount of debt. So in general, I mean, again, we've been doing this for 10 years now. We launched in 2009. I was the former register reporter for the county. Back in 2009, I could see what was coming. And I used to go and we'd talk to the publisher, and they would give you these, frankly, these cockamamie schemes about how if you assembled more page views, you would sell more advertising. And you could see what was going to happen to our democracy right there in front of us. So basically, back in about 2009, myself and some labor activists and some attorneys as well got together and said, let's try this nonprofit newsroom. I've always thought nonprofit is the best way for a civic newsroom to be owned, so that, again, there is no ownership. Hopefully it outlasts me, it outlasts everybody with this generation of voice, and it's there for the long haul. There's nothing to be bought or sold. The only thing to be provided is information about your communities. And we hold everybody accountable, Republican, Democrat. We don't have a partisan edge, even though I would say on certain days, depending upon what city you're in and who the governing majority is, we're seen as tilted as one way or the other. Ultimately, I think that's probably what you want your newsroom to be, is to not always tell you what you want to read as opposed to what's happening. So in general, I mean, that's kind of where we're at these days. On the coronavirus pandemic, I would tell you that there's not a lot of there's a lot of room to be concerned there. There's a lot of death that's going on right now. The transmissions are still continuing. We have very little reports from the county about contract tracing, what they're learning about contract tracing, what's working, what isn't working. We've seen that the county has this so-called county council decision that says it cannot enforce any COVID rules at restaurants or any other places. Now, at the same time, our infection rates seem to be as much as LA County, which is doing that kind of work. So again, devil's in the details of checking into what is happening there, really. We heard in the beginning that there were no outbreaks at homeless shelters, which I suspected from the beginning was wrong. Now we see the numbers are through the roof. We see outbreaks in the jails. We see outbreaks in the county government. They're everywhere. And yet, again, the Board of Supervisors has gone completely silent. Now the new approach for 2021 is to spend $3 million on a PR firm to come in and, somehow message. I mean, this is like pure county government. Spend $3 million to get a PR firm to convince people to take a vaccine that everybody wants to take. I mean, you've got so much demand for the vaccine that the web browsers can't even hold up to it. And yet the County Board of Supervisors wants to spend that money. And I suspect it's not necessarily for the vaccine rollout, it's for generalized PR, how to make things that are not running that well look much better. And you see it a lot as a reporter. You ask a question and what you get back are other statements, but not answers to your question. Like, what are we learning from contract tracing? And they tell us, well, not really, it's all over the place. But private gatherings are a problem, but not retail, but not, something else. And it's kind of like, again, they don't make any sense. I mean, you could have an 18-year-old do this job as long as you're just sort of there every day and asking the basic questions that would occur to an 18-year-old, you're in good shape. What's sad is the answers that you get back, or in many cases, the lack of answers that you get back. We've been asking for example, outbreak information from day one, will not give it to us. We may even have to go to court to get it. Death data, who's died from COVID. They'll tell you who was homeless that died last month, but not who died from COVID. I mean, it's this idea of just cover. Now you see in some ways, Michelle Steele got elected to Congress. So, it's kind of one of these things as a reporter, it's very frustrating. You go, this is not the way to run a government. This is not efficient. This is not it, but it gets reelected. So it works, you have a free press conference. More and more, you also have your politicians utilizing your city tax dollars to send out mailers. We saw that in Irvine. We reported on that, where one council member used $72,000 to flood mail out there. How's anybody supposed to compete with an incumbent that can get a 6-figure mail account, right? And put in county supervisors are even more efficient at it. So, that's a real problem. And, those are the issues that we've seen with COVID that have taken off, especially now with the vaccine, about where's it going. We have something on our site where we track, just simple things, phone numbers, where to get the website, but also demographic data about where's the vaccine going. And you see, again, it's going more to Anglos than it is to Latinos. And you're like, again, do you really need a PR firm to say, where should we be steering this? What's the most intelligent way? At minimum, you would want to see a public debate about that. And that does not seem to be happening. And that's, I think, the toughest part about your local government, that, again, to me, it keeps bleeding up to the higher levels. And this is where you get a Donald Trump and you get that situation, because we continue to have this approach, at the national level, especially, to politics, where there's no accountability, there's no real 2 and 2 is 4, and not anymore. Now, I can tell you from our perspective as a newsroom, it's been very successful. Like I said, we've got great partnerships at the university level, media partners as well. We've got more and more donors every day. The readership is growing. We're trying to get to more cities as well. That's the biggest message that I'd have out there for all of you, is that, this coming year, I think you'll see more city coverage from us and being able to get out there. For example, we got most of the information of where the vaccination centers were going to be from the Huntington Beach city manager, not from the county government. So more and more, we're also learning as reporters how to kind of, frankly, be alley cats and kind of feed ourselves and find information from lots of different entities, rather than just going back to the PIOs and that kind of stuff. We've really, as government has kind of shut down on us as reporters, we've really learned how to be a little bit more creative and a little bit more energetic. Probably the biggest impact of our model is that we anger people. I mean, as you report things out, people, especially officials, get very angry. Politicians, politicos, a lot of those people do not like information being out there. They want to control debates a lot. So that's the thing. I think we're seeing it. We see it in the impacts of the elections as well. I mean, it's a pretty even county, but these elections are getting pretty competitive everywhere at the city level. I mean, city elections used to be a GOP affair. The state assembly races this last year, looking at the election returns, we were all in the newsroom stunned. I mean, those used to be absolute just runaways with the GOP. And they have all turned, in fact, flipped, and they've become much more competitive affairs. Obviously, you're seeing that as Congress as well. That actually, I think, is a good thing, for Orange County, that you're seeing more competition around these offices. I think our main point from Voice is that you want to see engagement all the way through. You don't want to just depend on elections, because there's a lot that happens in between elections. And a lot of times Republicans and Democrats, guess what? They team up as officials. When they get up on those dioceses, there's a real team dynamic that develops. You see it right away as a reporter, where everybody starts being on the team and working with the team and all that kind of stuff. And you don't, again, see premises tested out. There's a real nervousness in government, whether it's the city manager or the county CEO. Let's not have that conversation in public. The public might figure out that it's the Wizard of Oz and that not everything is perfect and that we're actually making this up as we go along. And, that's the kind of, again, transparency you need in government. You don't want to drive in the middle of a foggy highway without any headlights or, any road markers. You need something to keep yourself accountable as you move down that road. Things like homelessness, I think that we could have made a big difference on homelessness. We haven't here in Orange County. They just continue to resist that. A lot of the basics, that's where I think that, we continue to see our government kind of like miss on the basics, right? The Board of Supervisors, in a lot of ways does not hit on those basics of transportation. Look at what you're having now in downtown Santa Ana, streetcar development. Like, that's what you really need right now in downtown Santa Ana, is to tear up the middle of Santa Ana and disrupt business for every business owner there on top of the pandemic, to then install a streetcar, which nobody asked for. And I don't think there's any need for it at all. And yet in an environment, again, a bipartisan environment, that idea moves forward. It's like it's a lot of money. Arctic is another example that I use a lot of times. Whenever you drive on that 557 freeway exchange and you see that big globe thing that lights up at night, That's like $1 billion entity built by your taxpayers. So you don't get bike lanes, you know, you don't get that kind of connectivity at the local level, but you get a big dome over a train station that nobody uses. You know, I mean, that's the insanity in some ways of local government. The Angel Stadium debate, you know, that's another one where 150 acres of prime real estate is just handed over to the main tenant right after they rip up their contracts in the middle of an election, you know, without any kind of bid, without any kind of like big hearings, without any even kind of like, let's dream big. What would we want to do if we wanted to have this be a baseball village? You know, what would we do with it? You know, law enforcement, most of your funding continues to go towards law enforcement solutions. When Kurt Reinhold, the homeless man that was shot, the African-American homeless man that was shot in San Clemente, that man was shot by the homeless liaison trained by the sheriff. So, you know, you kind of ask yourself, I mean, my gosh, even the people that you trained on dealing with homelessness, their approach of dealing with a person who's schizophrenic on a corner talking to themselves is to shoot the man. We haven't seen that, you know, the investigations finish out yet, but we know what happened. And we still question whether that's the best way to deal with homelessness, especially with what we've been through for the last 5 years. And yet, now, again, politicians really are good at selling to you, it's going great. They'll tell you everything that they've cited and the contracts they've signed, but they go away from saying, you know, here's the difference. You know, we have this many, and I don't know how many different ways it has to be proven, you know, whether it's Utah, Bakersfield, San Diego, that housing first works with homelessness. I mean, it's 2 and 2 is 4. There's no, you know, there's no debate there, right? At the same time of like low barrier shelters, like what do you do with that person that's not ready for that house yet or that apartment yet? They still have need somewhere to be sheltered. The Board of Supervisors doesn't want to hear that word. You know, we have a Catholic priest, Father Chris, who every month runs the names of people who have died that the government cites as being without fixed abode. It generates a lot of anger for a lot of people and a lot of people whose names are put there. It is his right to do so. It is reported from a government document, right? And I can see that a lot of people, especially the Board of Supervisors, does not like seeing that list. But that's what the Father has taken up to do, is to hold them accountable in real time every month. Is it making a difference? I don't know. But at least it's out there. At least that voice is out there and it can be heard. So in general, I mean, that's, I think, been the secret to our success. It's been op-ed writers, it's been reporters, interns, universities, other media partners. Everybody understands here the importance of getting real information out in real time, especially before governing decisions are made, right? I mean, it's one thing to tell you, well, there's nothing we can do now because we already bought it. The big key here for us, if we're to win, you know, as a society, is, and as free people, is to have those debates before the decisions are made. You know, too often times, and especially like in investigative journalism, you know, we watch the local hospital fall apart, then we fly in, we tell you how it fell apart, we win a, you know, we win a Pulitzer. City of Bell, we watch it be ransacked for by a decade, then we fly in, we tell you how it was ransacked to the last cent, and then we leave again. So that's, I think for us, voice is about staying there. It's like that toaster, you know, in your kitchen that toasts the bread just right every day, not too dark, not too light. It's there, it's reliable, you know, and we hit on all these basic quality of life issues. More importantly, we help you solve your quality of life issues, as opposed to us telling you what the solutions might be. Because like in any society, there's lots of different ways to do things. What's most important is the debate, the discussion that rational, intelligent, educated, free people can and must have to live in a vibrant democracy. So I probably leave it at that. And if there's any like questions or anything, I'm happy to entertain them.
There are a lot of questions. Yay. Annie, are you going to moderate the questions?
Yes, we have a lot of questions, and I'll just start with the first one. Okay. And it is, sorry. Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm scrolling through these comments. There's a lot of.
No worries.
Well, you've already answered that one. Please tell us how you decide what kinds of letters to the editor you accept. And how do you do the op-eds?
The op-eds, it's a great question. There's a writer's guide on the opinion section that you can see there, and that you can submit stories. You know, it's a community generated section. We either take the op-ed or don't take the op-ed. We generally have general, what we want to see in the op-ed section is tell us about something, that's civically that's happening. They talked to Teresa Sears. Teresa is a decade-long activist here, land use activist here in Orange County. I can't think of anybody better to deal with volunteers and people that are making a difference out in their community. So she's the kind of person that you would get in touch with through the webpage, and you send her your submission. You just have to submit your own headline, your own photo, your own subhead. We ask people to keep it about 1,000 words. And like I said, we get things from just all over the gamut of a variety of different issues. And generally on that, I mean, that's how we do it. And it works fairly, low key in that sense. It's pretty efficient.
We have another question here is, did you do any follow-up reporting on the result of the Orange County Sheriff investigation of the deputy wearing white supremacist and militant badge on his uniform?
We have looked into that. I think we have a story running, in fact, tomorrow that'll have some updates on what happened or didn't happen. As far as I know, that the Sheriff's Department looked into it and found that the deputy did not have any racist or other sentiments. That was their conclusion. They weren't. The challenge with all of this is that it's never done in a very public way. So you're just left with, that's what they tell you. We looked into it. There was nothing there. Just like, frankly, in a lot of these investigations, they look into it, there's nothing there.
Here's another question from Kathy Palmer. She says, I subscribe to the Voice of Orange County. In addition to being a great source of local news, the donation I make is tax deductible. I'd like to know more about how the Voice of OC is funded and why the donations are tax deductible.
Sure. Well, we're set up as a 501c3, which allows our donations to be tax deductible. We file all the required, federal documents in terms of being transparent in that manner. What was the rest of the question? How
are they tax deductible?
Well, they're tax deductible because we are a 501c3. Given our designation as a 501c3, you can write those off from your taxes. It's the same as giving money to the Red Cross, or there's a host of different organizations. Newsrooms are something that's new. That's probably the biggest challenge that the nonprofit news movement faces. These days, there's about 200 nonprofit newsrooms across America. I serve on the board of directors of something called the Institute for Nonprofit News, and it's kind of like the trade group that's tried to figure out low cost web stuff, low cost, all of the variety of things that you need to put together a newsroom, a way to do it in a functional way with lots of consulting and others for smaller newsrooms. They've worked a lot to try to introduce that idea or get people used to the idea of a nonprofit newsroom, because most of the time when you're thinking about a nonprofit, it's Friends of the Library, those types of things. The IRS has made the designation that news has fallen into that category. You see now, like, for example, the Philadelphia Inquirer is a nonprofit. The Salt Lake Tribune just recently switched from for-profit to nonprofit. Figuring that, again, some of that also gives you stability in a community. It's not just owned by one family, and the news ends up being whatever that one family likes, whether that family is left or right. I think the idea, again, of a nonprofit entity holding that sort of civic news is fair. It's probably as fair as you can get, where it's not one person or another person's agenda. Our board is diverse politically and, almost on every level you can think of. So the idea being there is that you see yourself in your news coverage.
Norberto, do you get enough donations, or is it a problem? Do you have enough to keep you afloat?
Well, that's always a challenge. I mean, we've been lucky enough and blessed to have good, solid foundation support that has given us a bit of a runway to try to get to that point. But frankly, it's a year-to-year struggle. It really is. Every year has been a struggle. It's been a good struggle. Every year has been better than the last year in that sense. But we really started, it's like a small diner shop. I mean, I've done everything from, take out the trash and clean the dishes to cook the meal to, put out the ads for it. Everybody here works a lot. One thing that we do is that being a nonprofit, again, it's for the community. So everybody really, works energetically. I think that we've set up a pretty fiscally intelligent system where, again, we've been able to get that foundation support early on. And as we get more and more and more readers, our hope is to be 100% reader funded. Some of those things have worked in Europe and other places. I think, again, the more that we get people recognizing reporting on their local communities matters, we continue to grow donors. And I think, again, over the last year, it's been very inspiring to see. I think we've got maybe about $100,000 a year that's coming in on readers. Now our overall budget is about $600,000. So as you can see, it's an expensive operation to keep 3-4 reporters in the field, photographers, web stuff, a digital editor. It's expensive. Now compared to, let's say, Voice of San Diego down in San Diego is a $2 million shop. So they have there's a much bigger philanthropic community in San Diego. There's kind of more of a older San Diego there than in Orange County. In Orange County, if you look at like the community foundation, a lot of the people that have like made their money are from a lot of other places. And so they tend to support their original communities a lot more than, let's say, their adopted community. So that's a bit of a challenge for Orange County in a sense of, for the foundation world, it's actually a pretty young community, right? I mean, only after about World War II. It's places like Boston, nonprofit newsrooms in Chicago. I mean, they are blessed to have just wonderful foundations and an amazing sort of civic infrastructure. Here in Orange County, our opportunity is different, right? I mean, here, I think in a lot of ways, we're able to build that civic culture right now, like on what we're doing on Zoom, right? In a digital way that can really be fast. I mean, I get really excited in the sense that I don't have to buy paper. When I talk to officials, I say, listen, I'm not going to have to redo a front page 5 times. We can do this as many times as we need to. And that we've seen it works. I mean, if you think about it, we're a tiny newsroom with no advertising of any sort, no marketing budget of really anything other than people's word of mouth. And it's worked. It's worked for a decade. I mean, people, like all of you see you see the difference. And I mean, we see it on issue after issue after issue. I mean, people are able to get the information. They're able to hold their officials accountable and make differences. I think probably one of the biggest disappointments this year has been the coronavirus, on just sort of like they've been able to keep the public out of the governing diocese a lot. A lot of the city halls haven't been particularly good about putting up, Zoom or ways to email comments in. That's something I think that, everybody should be pushing on their cities to say, how can you have all these meetings and not raise up your game, on the transparency level?
Especially when volunteers can do it.
Totally. I mean, you should see what your cities spend to broadcast their meetings on these like cheap looking, like they look like something out of a 7-Eleven security cam. And you could have volunteers, students from Chapman do it, put it on YouTube. That's the thing about, again, you're seeing now so much of your cities, there's a lot of potential creativity there. Even right now that you see it, for example, like the commercial housing or the commercial buildings may not be used as much as before. Maybe that's something for affordable housing. We see our sidewalks now are jam-packed like never before, right? That's a chance to maybe redo bikeways and have detached bikeways where you can get people going, with different. I mean, I'm sure every one of you has seen these electric bikes with kids at like 45 miles per hour.
Yeah.
On every sidewalk there. I mean, these are the pressing issues that I think, again,
that any minute they're going to hit me. I feel like a bowling pin. Any minute they're going to hit me.
Yeah, and I've seen them on electric mountain bikes on county trails. And and again, that's kind of one of the things. Again, as a nonprofit newsroom, you're out in the community, you're hiking around, and you go, I wonder how many accidents have happened on these trails between electric bikes. And that's when you go, I think I'm going to do a public records request on that and figure out and it is what it is, right? We won't tilt the story. We just tell the story of here's what the documents tell us. And then again, what are the officials, doing about that? Sometimes it just takes that one story to get a community member going or a group of community members going and asking questions. So again, I think that's, our best bet on staying free people with a good quality of life is to stay informed.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Norberto. Here's another question. From what the Voice of OC has seen, what's the best way to address the Mission Viejo City Council's shady election practices?
Well, yeah, that's one we've covered a lot. This is where they came out and they basically, a lawyer that happened across much of Orange County told them, you need to have district elections. You're disenfranchising different groups. Now, Mission Viejo is an interesting situation because it's not Santa Ana where you have a large, well, Santa Ana is an opposite one where you have the minority population is the majority. But in Mission Viejo, there's not a lot of communities of connection there or of color or of, what the Voting Rights Act is trying to get at. So I think the city council there has been grappling with that. But frankly, I don't know.
They've
Well,
been trying to hide.
Well, that's
And
what I mean.
Go,
Fair enough.
Go look up where they all live.
Don't make me mute you.
Most of the board members, city council members live within like a mile of each other. They don't represent the whole city. They represent South Mission Viejo.
And that is the critique of them. And when I say grapple, they're figuring out a way to, do we keep it? How do we keep that situation going? Can we keep that situation going? And it's like, no, you can't, because you're going to get sued eventually on it. They've done this thing of proportional. They came up with this idea of like proportional voting, very, very, almost like what I call parliamentary gymnastics of trying to make some kind of a change that would defend them in court. There have been some critiques that they're spending a lot more money on that than just instituting, a system. And look, I mean, Mission Viejo is pretty diverse. I think it's more diverse than necessarily we may think it is. But this is the challenge of that kind of voting system is probably going to be implemented all throughout Orange County at some point. I don't know that they'll be able to hold out forever, but that's been a holdout consistently almost since we launched Voice of OC. I mean, they've been at this for many, many years. I think Shankman is the name of the attorney that was suing a lot of the cities throughout Orange County, and most cities in Orange County, when they would get a challenge letter from this firm, would look at their situation, would say, we won't win. We will not win this. We're just wasting money. Mission Viejo has been the one sort of outlier, that has sort of like, again, tried to say, how can we do it a different way? Now, granted, setting up districts is not always the easiest thing to do in the world. So, I mean, there's also, when you start setting up districts, there's a lot of debates about who gets left out, what gets put with who. But there's no doubt that Mission Viejo has, in a sense, is trying to hold back the tide as much as they can. The real question for them long term is, how long can you do that, right? And how much taxpayer money are you wasting to continue to sort of like put back what is inevitable anyway? I mean, that's as much as I know. I mean, this is where these little cities, you would think that, like, well, what's coming out of Mission Viejo? Each one of these cities is absolutely fascinating. And they have, I mean, look, they have so many like fascinating fine points to Louise's point that you have to really actually know Mission Viejo to be able to jump in there and go, wait a minute, it's not this, it's this, or hold on a second, they're not doing it that way, they're doing it this way. I think that's the biggest trouble, is that a lot of our city officials don't, especially the ones that you have now. I mean, a lot of them, I think you would be, frustrated when you're talking to them about how little change moves, and sometimes it's like even getting them to talk about like, what are the issues in front of them? You also start realizing they're not as prepared as you would hope as city officials. I mean, I'm lucky. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen every municipal issue come through 50 times, so sometimes you'll feel bad as a reporter. You can ask them all these questions, but you walk away going like, man, this person's not really that well informed or doesn't really have a good grasp. People are making a big deal of Tito Ortiz in Huntington Beach, and Happy was like, half your officials, go ask your city officials some questions. You're going to hear some stuff that'll really surprise you.
Thanks, Norberto. Here's another question. What do you wish you could cover, but you don't have the resources? Your resources don't currently allow you to do that.
Water districts. It terrifies me what's happening at water districts. I can't get to every single water districts. It seems like I see a lot of consultants on those boards. That's where I get afraid of professional government. It's consultant-driven government. So that really worries me. Water boards, the Air Quality Management District, that's another agency that nobody covers. Nobody covers it. The LA Times doesn't cover it. The Register doesn't cover it. So these regional entities, Sandagger, the Association of Governments that are coming up with things like housing numbers, and there's all kinds of things at those levels of government that I don't think we're getting to. Law enforcement spending is something I wish we could do a better job of tracking it regionally, because every time you're talking about, and these are, in some cases take up 50-60% of your budget, you're asking, well, what's happening here? Why is our overtime so much? Well, same thing in Riverside, same thing over here. I think if we were able to cover that as a region much more, things like our air, our water, there's almost an aspect of that you have to, I ask myself, am I kidding myself that we could have Switzerland here in Orange County and be surrounded by, by areas that are, that are maybe not as run as well as we are. And I mean, eventually we will be, because we're a mess. I mean, if you look at any government agency, you will not be happy. I mean, that's just the stone cold hard truth about it. To me, that doesn't mean you should get depressed and disengage, right? And if anything, again, that's why we did Voice, because as investigative reporters, we realized sometimes too, we're just depressing people to just disengage. It's all wrong, nothing works. So there's got to be this sort of like, again, that's where the community has its part to get involved, to have opinions, to press your officials. I guess that's the biggest thing I would tell everybody, is that you make a difference. You make a difference. Sometimes media will tell you, one person doesn't. There was a lady in Brea that won a school board race by 1 vote, right? It's like you make such a difference in this system. And when you think about what all these generations of activists before us left us, sometimes I worry at night that I'm like, we're living off of somebody else. We're not doing enough. We're not going and dealing with our air, which AQMD came out of the 70s, right? When the air was so thick, you couldn't even see it. And it's like, now that it got a little bit better, we're kind of like, or like water. I mean, water's a terrifying one. I have a lot of things like this Poseidon plant that they propose over just the politicking of that alone. Forget about the science of it. Just when I see the politicking of it and the officials at water districts, I'm like, you are not getting covered enough. If you have this much time to do this kind of stuff, I don't think you get covered enough. And I mean, water is probably one of the most controversial things we have, right? I mean, if you watch, who was it, Chinatown, right? I mean, it's like, you see that it's big stuff about who can get water and where and how. So I think that's another big one for our future. At North County, I hear there's like a gas plume going towards one of the water districts. And again, there's been litigation on this for years. We still haven't really been able to kind of dive into it and get in. So that's what I'd love to see us do, a little bit more of these special districts.
Thanks, Norberto. Here's another question. Supervisor districts are large. What do you think of having 7 districts instead of 5?
Absolutely. I think that this coronavirus shows you that the current board is a disaster. You have a fake CEO who's not really the CEO. He's the CAO. The board runs everything, but they get to hide behind a CEO. At the same time, there's only 5 of them, and they treat each other like they're kings and queens of their district. I think that if we had 7, 9 even maybe, it would probably be better. I'm almost sure it would be better governance, because you just have more perspectives at the table. And it's a lot harder to cook a boondoggle when you've got to get more people, more people to sort of like deal with it. I also think that it would be important in some cases. I can see tension already in the Vietnamese and Latino community in that sort of first district. It would be interesting to have them have their own supervisorial district, so that you did not have 2 communities pitted against each other. 20 years from now, that will generate, I fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger, and potentially even something worse. At the same time, I would almost even tinker with making Board of Supervisors part-timers. They don't do much at all other than politic. I mean, literally ask any one of them, what have you done at the county to save me money? What have you done there to increase efficiencies? And I don't mean some generalized thing that everybody did. What did you do? What did you introduce? What did you get passed? And I think you'll find there's not one person over there that can point to much in the last decade, not that I've seen. I mean, they're great at setting up things, right? So like you get some shootings and you get the Office of Independent Review. Really sounds great, does nothing other than spend your money, right? Your public health director, you saw what happened when the first public health director, as a doctor, right, which was there by mistake because the top guy had retired. And so a mid-level doctor was actually the public health director. The person that's supposed to be the public health director is a medical doctor, right? Well, that person doesn't last in that job 10 minutes, because when they say, we got to open everything up on Memorial Day, and that doctor says, okay, but with the mandatory mask order, she gets death threats, and she gets no backup from the county government. There's nobody at the county government at the Board of Supervisors speaking back to the people that are hailing one insult after another, which is their right to do. But again, there's no voice from the Board of Supervisors saying anything. Well, when she leaves, that's when you get a compliant public health director, Dr. Chow, who's a nice guy, but publicly tells you that his job is to be a facilitator. I don't know about you, but when you go ask your doctor, hey, can I do this? How many times do you ask your doctor, can I do this? And the doctor goes, no, you can't do that. It's bad for you. You go, yeah, but what if I did it this way? And how about if I did it that way? And the doctor will just say, no, because it's just not good for you. So we went from that kind of a doctor to, sort of more of a compliant, in a sense, doctor. The auditor controller is another example. We had Eric Woolery over there, total, bulldog, going after it, looking at expenses, pension. This issue of the mailers being sent out was looking at it. Tons of pressure on him. Took his staff away statutorily. The guy ended up dying of a heart attack, completely demoralized. So again, I'd say make them part-timers. Approve a budget, come back every 3 months and approve any kind of quarterly adjustment that has to be done to that budget. Other than that, get out of the way. You're doing nothing but politicking and spending a ton of money. That at least would be my sense. But I think that absolutely the coronavirus has shown that our Board of Supervisors is overly politicized and has way too much of a hand in procurement. Something that literally was like Tammany Hall. We've had 100 years of government telling us, don't leave politicians in charge of procurement, especially not in a back corner. You're asking for trouble. And yet that's what we have today. So I think more eyes in that process would be great. That's a great question too, by the way.
Thanks, Norberto. Unfortunately, we only have 3 more minutes, but one of these questions is something that you and I had spoken about, how you would welcome tips or suggestions from us. And this is a question, it says, do you have a tip line for people to suggest things that need covering?
Yes. There's a tip line on the website. I can see if I can try to find the link to it, but you can send us tips all the time. In fact, we get tips all the time. I mean, most of our reporting comes from people in the community that are alerting us to stuff.
Norberto, if you send me that link, I can disseminate it to the members.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And just double checking. I think that what I would like to read to you is a comment from Gloria Self. And she says, I can't say it any better. She says, you're wonderful, Norberto. Your energy is amazing. And we're so fortunate to have your talents shining light on Orange County government. So we thank you so much. You're such a dynamic speaker. We learned a lot. And I'm just sorry we don't have a couple more hours. So thank you so much. This was just wonderful. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for all your work. Appreciate all your activism.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, we're going to have committee reports, and Janet Henry is the first report. Janet is in charge of candidate recruitment. Janet, are you there? Hello, Janet.
I'm here. Here I am. Had to unmute. Great. Didn't want to be blurting out during Norberto's presentation there. Well, I think Norberto did a good job for us in terms of advertising why we need to get Katrina Foley in there as the Board of Supervisors. So when you look her up, you will see that for most of us, admittedly, she's not our particular supervisor if she's elected, but that's not the point. We're trying to get a Dem and we're trying to get other people on. It's like, one step at a time there. So go on her website, read about her, and please do whatever you can to make individual contributions as well. And then we also have a second candidate to introduce you to tonight. Some of you might even know him, Gary Pritchard, and he is an educator. He is a music educator. He is the Dean of Music at Cerritos College. However, he also was on the school board here in the Capistrano Unified District. So you might know him from that. So his election is in June of 2022, but we are getting going ASAP because we know that that matters. We know that once we get our candidates lined up, then it makes the field stay small and we have a better chance of winning. So there we go for this evening, and I look forward to working with all of you. And I want to thank you for supporting all of our candidates in the past. We are making progress.
Thank you, Janet.
Mhm.
Okay, communications. We have a new chair in communications, although Allison has been working on it for quite some time. Allison, do you want to just say a couple words?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So the communications team, we've been restructuring. Rachel and I have been trying to hold down the fort. We're looking for extra help. If anyone would like to volunteer for the committee, we'll be adding, we're already adding one person, but we could always use more help. We manage the website, all the social media, the newsletter, back when we did printed materials and events, help with that. So there's we have our hands in a lot of things and we could use help. And if you're interested in volunteering, please contact us.
Yes, and thank you, Allison, for our great e-newsletters. I know we put a lot of information in there, and we hope people will read through all of it when you get those newsletters. Okay, community outreach, Ann Owens.
Okay. Yesterday was the National Day of Service, and we're having a week or several week day of service in Canyon Dems. So normally when we would meet in the Murray Center, we would often have food drives. And so we're doing a food drive this week for South County Outreach. And on Friday, I will be taking over the collections. All you have to do is email me. I will give you my address. I just didn't kind of want to put it out there for everybody. And, or if you want me to come, I will come to your house and pick up items if that is easier for you. And then I will deliver them on Friday to South County Outreach. They, at the bottom of the list and also on the email you got, there were suggested items. And they also take gift cards to Walmart, Stater Brothers, and Ralph's for $25 they suggested. So I hope tonight also that you put in your candle in your window. I put mine in at 5:30 for the National Day of Remembrance. That was today. And we appreciate if you did that. The other thing I'm working on is where the Laguna Hills Mall used to be. There is now going to be eventually a gigantic complex, and it's going to consist of office buildings, a hotel, restaurants and shops, and 4 to 5 apartment buildings. I am with a group that is working to try to influence the city council that this low-cost housing would be a wonderful addition to this Laguna Hills Mall project. They're now calling it the Villages at Laguna Hills. And so I am trying, because they're under the assumption that nobody in all of Laguna Hills needs to build anything anymore. So this is the perfect time for Laguna Hills to be able to meet their housing element requirements that's required by the state. So if you, and I already have contacted some of the club members that live in Laguna Hills and asked them if they would be willing to write an individual letter for me. But if you have any friends, or if I have not contacted you and you live in Laguna Hills, if you could please contact me at my name, Ann Owens at cox.net. If you would be willing to write a letter, and I will give you talking points, who to send it to, how to write the letter. I would appreciate all the support we could get to show their city council that yes, low-cost housing is definitely needed in Laguna Hills. We're going at this from an economic standpoint. And after doing research, we found out that 50% of the people who live in Laguna Hills would qualify for low cost, for affordable housing. And
Wow.
affordable housing is in many, many layers, running from $103,000 a year to $30,000 a year. We're aiming at the $30,000 to $40,000 a year people. And so we're trying to make it a more inclusive community, and a community that could be self-sustaining and not just for the super rich. So I could really use your support if anybody has, as I said, any kind of contacts that you could put my way. I'd appreciate it. This is probably going to come up for public discussion in either February or March. No, you know, they're not letting any specific date out yet, but that's the timeline they're kind of going by now. So that's it. Thank you.
Anne, thank you so much for being on top of this. I think it's really important, and it made a big difference in Lake Forest when we got people involved. So
Right.
please help Anne on this. Okay, field team. We have a new chair. Judy's been on the field team and was a super texter and did an outstanding job registering high school students to vote. So Judy, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Judy Fike, and I was on the field team, mainly doing voter registration, and I was asked to step up. I am going to be following in some big footsteps left by Faye, but I know I'm going to have support from the other people on the team, and our major job is voter contact. And of course, COVID had made that a lot more difficult. So we've come up with some alternate ways to contact the voters, texting, postcards. We did do some literature drops, and hopefully we'll be able to return to direct voter registration if we ever get COVID under control. And we will be looking for some additional helpers down the line. So I hope you'll consider joining the committee.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of fun on the field team. Okay, fundraising, Marty. Are you there? Whoa. Hey,
Okay.
Marty.
I'm here. I've got a message that the host is not allowing participants to unmute themselves. Okay, I'm Marty. I'm on the fundraising team, and I would like to introduce Melora, who's going to be my co-chair. We're going to work on this together. It's a big job, and we want to raise crap loads of money so that we can continue to donate as much as we possibly can and max out to all of the candidates who are in our area. We've had a wonderful year. Last year, we did some fun things, and we're not stopping now. We had some wonderful car parades, and they were very successful, and they were a lot of fun. And so we're going to continue that. We've got a Valentine's Day car parade fundraiser on actually Valentine's Day, but it's in the middle of the day. So if you have some plans with your sweetie in the evening, you can still do that. So for your donation of $50, you'll get a personal parade in front of your house, along with a yard sign and a heart-shaped box of chocolates. So you can sign up on the website to either be part of the parade or to honor your sweetie for $50. Now, the being in the parade doesn't cost anything, but to get the goodies cost $50 as a donation. In addition, we've got our sustaining donor program, and so far, just in January, we have 20 people who are continuing sustaining donors. And that's over and above your dues, which is very reasonable. But we have people who give $5 a month or write a single check for an additional amount, whatever you can afford. We've already raised $1,255. That was up until January 9th. So the sustaining donor program has been very, very successful, and we raised over $10,000 last year just with the sustaining donors. So we hope that if you have a little bit extra to spare, that you can sign up to do that. Like I said, you can make a one-time contribution on the website, or if it's through ActBlue, or set it up as a monthly amount. And we've had some very generous people, and we appreciate that very, very much. I think that's it.
Okay, Marty?
No,
Yeah.
wait, that's not it.
Oh, except Melora has something to say.
We're actually going to have our first team meeting tomorrow night. It's going to be a Zoom meeting. So we've sent out invitations to people that have been on the committee last year. And then Marty's gotten a couple of people that, I think 3 people that were interested that were new. So if anyone is interested in joining us, our first meeting is going to be tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And our goal is to eventually be doing them every month. We prefer to do them in person, and hopefully that'll be later this year. But in the meantime, we're doing them as needed, probably monthly, but we'll see how it goes tomorrow and what we've got going on. So if you're interested in participating, just shoot me or Marty an email and we'll get you the login for the meeting tomorrow night. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Melora.
Thanks.
Okay, membership. Ann Owen is coming back. Ann?
Okay, so it's January, and in January it's renewal time. We're really lucky because so far 158 people have renewed, and we also have 46 new members for a total of 2,004. And since 2 days ago when we sent this to Louise, that actually has now gone up to 217 members. So they're coming in every day. It's hard to keep up. So if you have not, if you renewed in September, October, or November, your membership carries through. If you have not, it is time for you to renew again. If you go on the website under membership, there will be 2 little keys. You can either do new membership or renew existing. And it's very easy to go on ActBlue and pay with your credit card. If it goes through, you will get a receipt. If you don't get a receipt, it has not gone through. So, which means I will probably be calling you in a day or 2 saying, we saw you going online, but we didn't get any money. So we stay on top of that in case, in case people try and it doesn't work out. You may also, if you feel more comfortable, there's a membership form that you can just print off. The address is on in RSM where to send it, and you can mail it to our mailbox. So that is a second alternative to join. This is above and beyond your sustaining donorship if you're a sustaining donor. Your membership is $30 per person, $50 per family, and then you can also go in and do an additional sustaining donorship, either whatever way you pick out to do. So I just wanted to just remind people that there are 2 separate ways to help our club.
Right.
Okay.
All right, Ann, thank you. Okay, political action, Andy Alexander.
Hi.
By the way, Andy is new to this committee and she's got lots of great ideas. So Andy, take it away.
I'm trying to, but I was muted. Oh, I'm live. Okay. First of all, I just want to say that the focus group committee really ties into everything that Roberto was talking about, because we press our city councils to do things for us, such as, well, we develop community involvement to press our city councils to move in directions that represent our values, such as creating affordable and low-cost housing and adopting community choice energy to combat climate change. The Lake Forest Group has made significant strides in both of these areas. I'm very proud to say that. And I want to thank all of the people that participated by sending emails and leaving phone messages to the council, and also going in person and speaking publicly to the council. We moved the needle in the right direction. Your efforts really made a difference, so thank you so much. And now I'm so happy to tell you that Patty Ebel will be leading the Rancho Santa Margarita focus group. Patty was instrumental in initiating the swag sales at RSM prior to the Biden-Harris campaign, which got Ann and I involved. She clearly has strong organizational leadership and people skills that make her perfect for this position. Ann and I had thought about her a lot for a lot of different positions in our club because she is such an excellent candidate and would complement any committee. I know she'll do a great job organizing the RSM focus group. She already has a list of emails from folks she met while doing her swag sales. I was so happy to talk to her today and have her volunteer to be the lead on the RSM committee. Also, I'm happy to tell you that someone we all know and love, Walt Lawson, who has been active in our club for many years in many different ways, in many different positions, and is trying desperately to retire. Ha ha, we're gonna let that happen. He'll be assisting, and I'm saying assisting, with the Mission Viejo focus group. Walt has served on the fundraising committee, the nominating committee, and he's also been one of the chief organizers of our biggest fundraiser, the holiday brunch. I remember going to those meetings, and Walt took minutes at those meetings, and they were very detailed, and he sent them to all of us. He's so good. And on occasion, he's had to take minutes for me when I was secretary and I was unable to be there. So he's kind of a jack of all trades and a master of all of them. Thank you, Patty and Walt. I'm so happy to be working with you. I know you'll do a great job.
Great.
That's it for me.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, programs. Annie, do you want to fill us in a little bit more about what you're planning?
Sorry, the classic, I didn't know I was muted. I wanted to let you know that the members of the program committee are Ted Pearl, Herb Cohen, Alan Toole, and Jonathan Miller, and myself as chair. Our goal is always to provide the members with programs of topics of greatest interest to them, and also presenters who are dynamic and compelling. That in mind, we have a wonderful schedule for the rest of the year. I'll be talking about it kind of in sequence. If you have any comments, you know, we always welcome comments and want to know what you're thinking, and it's always really helpful. So you could please send an email to programs@canyondems.org.
Yeah, and I misspelled it on the slide.
And I think that's it for programs.
Thank you, Annie. Okay, and Kathy, you want to talk about the small business group just a little bit?
Okay. I actually had to press the unmute button, but not the regular one.
Okay.
I'm tricking you all tonight. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. Thanks, Rachel. Okay, so I did a little end of year email just to find out how everyone was doing, and I actually only got one response back. So I don't know if it's just that everyone is busy with all the absolute insanity that's been going on these first 2 weeks of the year, because as we all know, it's been crazy. So I don't really know how all of them are doing. Like I said, I only got one response from the t-shirt guy. What I can say is that when we are all back in-person meetings and stuff like that, this will be the best use of this committee is in-person meetings, because that's when people can see who other, small businesses, the people who actually own them are, and can decide, hey, I really do need somebody to help me with my, locksmith needs, or doing a hike of the Pyrenees Mountains, or whatever it is. And yes, Rachel, I'm running for 8M. There are several people on the call who are actually, there's several people
and
on
I have
here.
a slide on that too.
Yeah. We'll get to that. So that wasn't in this section. I just saw it happen to pop up while I'm in there. And everyone else is jumping in. So that's all I had to say about the small businesses. I think it's much better to be in person, because it helps people to see who the small businesses are. And then also at that point, the small businesses will be able to do something like sponsor the snack bar, the snacks or the drinks or something like that we do at the meetings. So in person is going to be a much better use of this group. So that's me.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay, Kathy mentioned that we are in the middle of the ADEM elections that is sponsored by the California Democratic Party. We urge people to sign up to get ballots. If you got a ballot, it has to be received by the state party by January 27th. So obviously
that's been changed. That's been changed. They just announced like a day ago or 2 days ago that they will accept arrival by the 30th of January, as long as they're postmarked by the 27th. And the reason being is they only finished mailing out the last batch yesterday.
Ah, okay. Well,
So,
I got mine and I've already mailed it back.
Yeah.
So if you didn't get one of these ballots, there's nothing you can do now. So it's just a reminder. And I'm trying to remember, I know Kathy Udovich, who you just heard, is running in which assembly district, Kathy?
73. I'm in 73, and also on this call is Alan Fenning, who's on this call. Jerry Fromm is on the call. Ted Pearl, he's in, I believe it's 68.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about Vivian?
Yeah, Vivian is on 73.
Right. Okay. So if you're looking for people to vote for, it'd be nice to vote for the people that belong to Canyon Dems. Okay. All right. Okay. Treasurer's report. Ken?
Hi. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. First off, I wanted to thank everyone for your support, for giving me the opportunity to be your treasurer for the last 5 years.
Wow.
I am the senior board member at this particular time. It's been actually a very great group of people to work with, and I am very honored to serve this group, and I'm got another 2 years to go now, it seems. So that's good. Okay, so even though these are kind of boring treasurer's reports, I'm going to try my best to let you know where we stood at the end of the year. And considering this was a year that every chair has tried, at every instance here, the chair has tried to drain the treasury at the end of the year with either contributions to candidates or whatever else. Gary Kephart tried it in 2018. Louise, even though a bit more respectful of our minimums in the accounts, tried it too, but we got money back for over contributing to candidates. So where we stood at December 1st was $11,655.60. This is our membership dues, and the sustaining donors have been they're always the memberships and sustaining donors are always rock solid at the end of the year and at the beginning of the year, but sustaining donations has been a steady flow, and it's very much appreciated. So we brought in that, and with our merchandise sales, one of our big hits was the face mask. Boy, that could not have come at a better time. I think we made over $2,000 last year on face masks alone. So it's been phenomenal. And we actually have one of our members that actually does the work and donates it as an in-kind contribution to us, which
Jenny Golden,
and it's very much appreciated. It's pure profit. It's a great thing. So we had $4,400 as our deposits for December. The only real expense we had in December was a texting program that we had used to text that Annie Krinsky and other people, the field team, had basically gone out and use this to help send out messages to support candidates. And this was a very effective approach. And so that cost us $4,900, but it was money well spent, much better than actually sometimes direct contributions, because we controlled the message, and it was very good. Obviously, we have to pay dues to the Secretary of State because we're a member of both the Fair Political Practices Committee, the FPPC, which is a state committee, a state PAC, and we're also a member of the FEC, Federal Elections Commission, which is a federal PAC. So we pay dues for our state. We don't pay dues to the federal, as far as I'm aware, but this is we do report to both of those agencies. So our and no campaign contributions in December. We had made two to Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff in Georgia in November, and that came good. That was worth it. Good money spent there.
It worked.
So 5185.05 was our expenses. We ended the year at $10,870.55. And since then, we are now, due to a very large sustaining donation, and you know who you are. I hope you got a thank you from us. We're at $12,953.95. So we're starting off the year good, and this is a very a year you basically start stockpiling money, so that next year is when we go and we start distributing money to candidates, and we have some good candidates in our districts and in our county that we do have to support. So your contributions help all these efforts. So thanks very much, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
So we're toward the end here. So please stay safe and healthy and stay engaged. Remember, we're all in this together. Whatever you're feeling, the rest of us are probably feeling the same confusion and concern. And we're going to leave it open for a while for people to visit if you would like to. I think we'll keep it maybe open until maybe 9 o'clock, 9:15